this is James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting March the 4th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. I am so glad you are here. Before getting into this week's reading though, I just want to take a moment to thank those of you who tuned into the Oracle Outlook throughout the month of February. Because if you remember, I dubbed February Tarot Month. And so throughout the month, I used different decks in my collection, tarot decks that is, those that represented certain highlights or certain markers or signposts in my 20-year journey with tarot. Last month I celebrated 20 years with tarot because it was 20 years ago last month that I got my very first deck, and that set me on the path in my exploration, my study, my work, my practice, and my relationship with tarot. So I wanted to honor that because 20 years is a milestone, and I wanted to celebrate that. But I wanted to thank those of you who tuned in to each one of those readings. I noticed that each week they progressively got longer in time, so I want to thank those of you who tuned in, especially because you gave me the gift of your time. I'm working with a new camera, and so one of the things that I love about this camera is that it doesn't cut off after a certain point in time like my previous camera did. I don't know if I ever shared this, but with my previous camera, there was a 20-minute time window that I had, so I had to be really mindful about making the most important use of my time, because after 20 minutes it would cut off and it would cause a gap a few seconds. So if I was in the middle of a profound thought or awareness over the cards and it went past 20 minutes, that thought would get lost because there would be a gap created, and then it would resume filming. Whereas the camera that I have now, it doesn't do that. But one of the challenges is that I can go on, and then I realize, oh my gosh, so much time has gone by in this reading. Like last week, I shot it, and then I stopped, and then next thing you know, I looked at the time, and an hour had gone by. I'm like, where did the time go? So I really want to thank those of you who tuned in as each week went on, because each week the readings got longer and longer. And I know, just as a person, myself and the challenges that I go through in my daily life, I know that time can be a thing for people, and so I want to thank those of you who gave me the gift of your time. So I hope it was well worth that investment of your time. So thank you one and all. So now, as we're moving out of Tarot Month and we're returning to normal for me in this space, I wanted to return to working with more Cartomancy style decks. So the deck of choice, or the system of choice for this week, is that I'm working with playing cards. So I worked with a tarot playing card deck last week. I'm carrying it over in this sense. It's not a tarot deck. I'm working with a straight up playing card deck. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm being a little self-indulgent. This is a week. I'm celebrating something else this week. I'm celebrating my birthday. So this coming Thursday, March the 7th, is my birthday. So I'm kind of giving a gift to myself, in a way, by picking a deck that I really resonate with and that really reads well and speaks well to me. So the deck is, I'm working with the Knowledge playing cards. They are produced by the Legends Playing Card Company. And as always, I will be leaving information about the deck in the description box below if you'd like to learn more about it, or if you happen to be an avid playing card deck collector and you want to acquire it to your collection or add it to your collection, you'll be able to do that. So again, we are working with the Knowledge playing cards by the Legends Playing Card Company. And so now that I've set things up, let's now get to the table and take a closer look at the cards that are going to be making up this week's Oracle Outlook, because I'm especially excited because it's my birthday, so I really am looking forward to seeing what's in the cards for myself as the reader and for all of you. So now let's go do that. And here we are with the cards on the table. I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the cards. And as I do, I'm focusing on my usual intention for these weekly general readings. And that is on the information, the insight, and the guidance that will be most helpful and beneficial as we move through the upcoming week. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. Now I'm going to fan the cards out. And I'm going to be doing a line of 5, so I'm pulling 5 cards from the fan that are getting my attention. It's 2, 3, 4, and we're looking for the final one for 5. This one's getting my eye. So those are the 5 cards, and now I'm going to take the remainder of the deck up and put that to one side for now. Now that I have the cards selected, I'm going to take a moment to line them up. All right. So I'm going to start things off by looking at the middle card. For me, the middle card is what we call the focus card or the central issue card, but it also is the hinge card because it connects the cards on the left to the cards on the right. So taking a look at that, we have the 2 of spades. All right, so this is a very interesting contrast from last week. If you remember in last week's reading, we had the 2 of hearts in the middle, and I talked about that card being about relationships and partnerships because of the number 2, and that was about emotional connections, emotional bonding, relating to somebody on an emotional level, sharing feelings. This card is its stark opposite. So we have a contrast from this week to last week. This week we have the 2 of spades. So spades for me is a suit of problems, troubles, difficulties, obstacles, and blocks. And so here we have a relationship that is problematic, that is difficult, or that we are experiencing a problem within a relationship, right? So we have a very different focus this week. And so it could be based on some of the things we talked about in last week's reading. So again, 2 of spades here. If we're talking about it from a relationship standpoint, then there's a problem within a relationship, or that there is a difficult or problematic relationship that is the focus or the center of whatever the other cards are wanting to talk about. Another possibility here is that this card can represent, much like I talked about last week, where I talked about with justice being at the end of the line in last week's reading, I talked about this idea about somebody possibly divorcing or splitting. This is another thing with this card. This card can represent a relationship in which there's a split or some kind of separation or disconnection. If we talk about, like I said last week, where we talked about an emotional connection, you know, the 2 being about connection, then here we have maybe a disconnection or a problem establishing some kind of connection, right? Now, another aspect of this card could be whatever the situation is that's being shown with the outer cards, there may be a sense of pressure or force. Sometimes this card can be about being pressured to do something or being forced to do something. So there may be something about taking a look at what are the pressures surrounding us in our life this week, or situations in which we feel we're being pressured by other people, that's the 2, or that we're being forced into a situation that we may not otherwise step into. Another thing with the 2 of spades in the positive sense, the spades for me can represent the mind. So this could be about sharing ideas, much where I talked about last week with the 2 of hearts about sharing feelings. This could be making a mental connection. You know, this could be sharing ideas, sharing information. The 2 is a number of sharing. right? So it could be sharing information, sharing ideas. It could be the meeting of the minds, where two people come together to brainstorm or exchange ideas or information, and call it the meeting of the minds, because the two can represent meetings. At least where two parties are getting together, right? So again, we have this idea about pressure or force in the challenging sense, a split or separation or disconnection, again in the challenging sense. But in the positive sense, this could be two people coming together to exchange ideas or information. And it's like putting our heads together, the meeting of the minds. So that is what I would say with the two of spades right now. But it could also be, as I was about to wrap up, it could be like two people coming together to put their heads together to deal with a problem or a difficulty, right? So it could be the meeting of the mind, so to speak, is because there is a central issue, problem, difficulty that's mutual, that's in their best and mutual interest to put their head together to come up with a solution, right? So that is with the two of spades in the middle. So now let's take a look at the surrounding cards, starting with the card on the far left. And here we have the king of spades. Okay, so now here we have with the king of spades, we have a face card. So for me, I tend to read face cards as people, but they could also represent approaches that we're being asked to take. So if we consider this to be a person, this could be a man who is single, unmarried, because for me, the king of spades can represent a single or unmarried man. It could also be somebody who is a judge, because this for me is the judge card. So here we have again this idea about, if we go with the idea that this represents a split, a separation, some kind of disconnection, it may be a matter of going before a judge to make that official, right? Because the judge is actually looking this way, right? So there is that, but it could just be a matter of taking charge or getting some power and control over some kind of difficulty, because we have spades here and spades here. So remember, spades are about problems, challenges, difficulties, blocks, and obstacles, right? So it could just be a matter, again, I'm going to repeat this, about putting our brain or our mind to work to overcome a problem, a difficulty, or some kind of challenge. Right? So again, the king of spades as a person can represent somebody who's single, somebody who's unmarried. He can represent a judge, somebody who works in either law or law enforcement, right? But king symbolically, if I can get the word out, can represent power, control, and mastery. So it could be, how can we get power and control or gain a sense of mastery over a problem, challenge, or difficulty. Right, so the other interesting thing to note here is that the king of spades is looking to this card. So it'll be very interesting, because I read with direction in mind to see what's here. So let's take a look at that now. And here we have the 8 of diamonds. So the 8 of diamonds is a money card. So there may be something having to do with money. So if we go with the idea that there is maybe a divorce or a split, a legal matter that we're working on making official, what's going on in between may be a matter of working out something on a financial level, because the 8 of diamonds can represent financial limitations or restrictions, some kind of restriction around money. And especially because it's flanked by spades, here we have a problem with the spades on each side with money in the middle. So if somebody is going through some kind of legal separation or divorce process, then what's going on is a matter of trying to work out the finances within that. This would be about bookkeeping, accounting, financial record keeping. It could also be about budgeting. So there is that to consider with that. If it's not in the divorce process or a split and money is becoming the central issue, then we have a situation where somebody may need to work on their finances. Again, going with the idea that this can represent a budget, this could represent accounting, bookkeeping, financial record keeping. And then we're working on, taking care of this problem. With the spades flanking it, it could be something where the finances go up and down. And we're working on creating balance. Here, the 2 would be about balance. So there may be something about, spending more money than what we have, because the 2 here would represent imbalance with the spade. Right? And 8 actually is a number of balance. So somebody would be better served by taking a better look or a closer look at their finances and getting that under control, because here both of these cards suggest financial imbalance. Another thing that the 8 of diamonds can represent on a physical level, this card can represent the eyes. So if it's not something having to do with the way somebody's seeing something, their vision, then it could just be a matter of keeping an eye on something. Right? And the only other thing I would say is that if we go with the idea here, another possibility here is that somebody's experiencing something with their eyes, either one or two things. Either they may need to see a doctor, that would be the King of Spades, to work on correcting the vision problem. And one possibility could be either glasses or contact lenses, because this card being the eyes can represent spectacles, which would be glasses. Or that there's a situation that they need to keep their eye on. Right? So somebody may be needing to have some attention put on their eyes this week. And if it's not in the literal sense like I've just said, then it's about maybe the way that you are viewing or seeing a situation. Another situation possibly here is that whatever the situation here is with the 2 of spades and the King of Spades, it's become a spectacle. Because sometimes this card can represent things that we are watching or viewing, taking a look at, and it's become a spectacle. Right? And if there is something having to do with money, there may be a sense of being forced or pressured to do something because of financial problems or challenges. And if it's with the eyes, then it may be just a matter of the eyesight has gotten to a point where it has to be addressed, because again, going with the idea that the 2 of spades represents being forced to do something or some sort of pressure. So that is how I would look at the first 3 cards. And now let's turn our attention to the card on the right side of the 2 of spades. And closest to it we have, here, interesting. So now here we have another 8. So now we have the 8 of clubs, right? So the nice thing about this card is that clubs represent work or business. So I read a clubs card coming after a spades card as a problem that gets worked out, and it's going to take some work or effort, right? And so here we have the 8 on this side and 8 on this side. So the 8 can represent things having to do with power. So there may be a power issue here, and that would make sense if we have a split or a separation or some kind of disconnection. There may be a power struggle. Again, it can also have to do with money. The 8 is a number of abundance. But the 8 is also a number of justice. So there may be something about, again, this idea about working out an issue with money that's fair for both parties involved. Now this 8, the 8 of clubs, can represent work or business. So this may be something that has to do with someone's business as well, because again, this is work or business. But this could be having money for everyday daily living or activities, because this card can also represent daily life and daily activities. Now since it comes after the 2 of spades, and I already talked about here about a disconnection, this card can represent conversations. So it could be saying to one of the things that may be helpful or needed to work out whatever the disconnection is here with the 2 of spades, then it may be a matter of having a conversation. Right? And with that, if this is about force or pressure, there may be some sort of force or pressure to have a conversation in an effort to work something out. So I'm seeing that, but the 8 of clubs can represent work and business. It could also represent something that we are working on or putting effort into. It could be some kind of business we need to attend to if it's not business in the literal sense. But it can also represent conversations and daily life and daily activity. So I'm seeing that with the Eight of Clubs. And so now let's take a look at the last card, rounding the line out. Oh, this is interesting. So now here on the other side of the line, we have the King of Diamonds. Okay, so I had a feeling that two kings would show up in the reading today. So I was prepared to say this. When I see kings on both sides, I was told to say this. If more than one king came up, it's just like I said here with the two eights, the Eight of Diamonds and the Eight of Clubs. There's a situation going on this week in which we have to regain a sense of power and control, possibly, because the kings, remember, symbolically can represent power, control, and mastery. And I already talked about here about a potential power issue or power struggle, right? So it's something about restoring power. So it's about taking a look at your relationships this week or your interactions this week with other people and seeing where there might be an imbalance of power and or situations in which we give up power to another person, because again we have the two eights about power and the two kings about power. Right now we also have two spades. Remember, spades is the suit of problems, challenges, difficulties, obstacles, and blocks. And we have two diamonds. Diamonds is the suit of money or material concerns. It's about material resources. So not just money, but anything on a physical or tangible level. It could also be about our sense of worth and value. But it's also about energy and the energy of success. Like we're putting in a situation or putting effort and work into a situation in which we want to have some kind of success with the diamonds, especially coming after a suit of clubs. This would be work or effort that pays off. If we just go with the suit, clubs, work, effort, diamonds, payoff, reward. So would suggest, if we go with the idea here that this is about challenges, problems, blocks, what can we do on an energetic level by putting work or effort into a situation that we can see some payoff or some success on the other side of it, right? And again, for somebody in particular or some people in particular, there may be some work and effort needing to be put into finances, because here we have the King of Diamonds. One of its meanings can represent a man who has power, control, and mastery over his finances, right? This usually can represent somebody who's wealthy, somebody who's rich. But if it's not that specifically, this is about getting power and control and having a sense of mastery over finances or over your material and physical world. Now, in this particular case, one other possible scenario is that we have a situation with two men. We have the King of Spades, King of Diamonds. They're each looking in the direction of the other person, right? So there's a relationship here, but these are the cards that are coming between them. The focus card, again, it represents a split, separation, disconnection, again, or meeting of the minds, putting our heads together, that kind of thing. But when two face cards are looking at each other, there's some agreement here. Like we're looking at the situation the same way. We're looking eye to eye or face to face, right? So they each are sharing a particular problem. They share the problem, two being about sharing, and it's about what are we willing to do to work it out on our sides, right? But each king facing an 8, they have some sense of power. Like there's some power that they each have in the situation to work it out. But are they willing to work it out? Right, so there is that. And then sometimes what I do is I take a look at the card that the person is looking at. So in this particular case, I already talked about this. The Eight of Diamonds can represent keeping an eye on finances, you know, financial records, bookkeeping, accounting, right? But the suit of diamonds can also represent an outlook that this person needs to have. So for this particular person, they need to have a sense of patience or persistence, because diamonds can represent an attitude of patience and persistence, right? So this person is going to be approaching the situation being patient and persistent. Now on this side, this king is looking at clubs. From an emotional outlook, the suit of clubs can represent frustration and impatience. So one party may be impatient and one party may be more patient. So we have impatience versus patience, right? And so that could be where we have this idea about somebody being forced or pressured to do something. And if that's the case, then it may be one side is more impatient, trying to produce a result, than the other. Or that somebody's going to be forced and pressured to do something because of their impatience about trying to work the situation out. So that is how it will look at it. One other thing, or two other things we can do is we can take a look at what I call the underlying influences. And the way we do that is that we take the first two cards, at least start with it, and add the numbers across. So kings are valued as 13 in cartomancy. So 13 and 8 is 21, and 21 reduces to 3. So here as an underlying influence, we have 3 as a number of growth and development and increase and expansion. So there is something here with these two cards. We're talking about the underlying influence has to do with growth, development, increase, or expansion. It's about wanting to grow and develop something. So here if we go with the idea about taking a look at finances, we're doing it with the idea that we want something to grow and develop. We're looking at trying to create increase, right? So there's that. Here, then we take these two, and like I said, taking the 8 and the 2, we have 10. 10 is a number of transition. It's also a number that talks about success. So we're trying to transition a situation. We're trying to come out on the other side of it successfully. And then the 10 also reduces to 1. So we have a number here that represents endings and beginnings, wanting to complete something and start something new up. So that's what we have here, right? And then we have 2 and 8 again. So we have that very same influence that we talked about here being repeated here. So there's something about wanting to transition through the sense of ending something and starting something new. We may be in that space in between something ending and something starting because we have that same influence being repeated. Now the 1 is also about the individual. The 1 is connected to the aces in cartomancy, so it can represent, something new, something beginning, the potential for the future, but also doing something individually. The 1 represents the individual or the self, right? Or being initiated into something. So this could be the initial stage of a situation that we're trying to work out. And then very interesting, we have the same thing repeated that we had with the first two cards here at the end here, because we have 8 and 13, and that's another 21. And 21 reduces to 3. So the theme here is because we have repeating numbers. We had a 3, a 1, then a 1 again, and another 3. So the theme here is about a transition, but also working on coming up with something that's going to grow and develop, coming up with some kind of solution that's going to grow and develop or create some kind of increase and expansion. Right? So that is what we can do for the influences. And then the last thing we can do is we can take a look at the numbers on all the cards and add them up and reduce them to a total between 1 and 9 to give us a theme for the overall line and for the week ahead. So we have 13, 8, 2, 8, and 13. And that gives us a total of 44. So 44 reduces to 8. So again, we have this idea 8. 8 is being repeated because we have 2 8s in the line. So the theme here for this week, it's about power. It's about control. It's about abundance. Again, money. Money is about abundance. It could also be tied to someone's career or business because the 8 is a number of business. It's about career. It's about the entrepreneur. That's another aspect of the King of Diamonds. So if somebody's doing something having to do with business, there may be a business partnership. something of a legal nature and we're trying to come to terms about maybe something having to do with finances. You know, and it's making me feel like if that's the case, one person may be presenting as the face of the business because the suit of clubs can represent something social or with the public. So somebody may be the face of the business and then somebody may be the pockets of the business because we have this king looking at the money card, right? So somebody may be the pockets, somebody may be the face, or somebody may be doing some part of the work and the other person's just doing the monetary aspect of it. They're putting the money in, but this one's doing all the work, or the work, again, the work in business. And then we have to come to some agreement. So there may be some sort of difficulty coming to some agreement with the situation and needing to work that out. Right? But the 44 reduces to 8. So like I said, 8 is a number of power. It's a number of abundance. It's a business, career. It can also represent organization. So maybe the overall theme is it's about putting energy and effort into getting our lives organized because there may be a sense of imbalance. Specifically with some people, it may be around finances and needing to either create a budget or start bookkeeping, accounting, things of that nature. Or if we go with the idea that this is about energy, then this could be about a balancing out of time, energy, resources. Right? And so there may be that, but it's about how can we restore or get under control the situation here that these cards are pointing to. And so on that note, I will go ahead and round out and end this week's Oracle Outlook. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and as I close, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week. Take care.